The secret of getting ahead is getting started. Mark Twain. Hi, and welcome back to Ariadne's Quotes of Wisdom, episode 17. So I'm getting a little bit better about getting back, not super frequently, but at least frequently enough, right? So this one is pretty obvious from the regular standpoint. Can't get anywhere, right, if you don't actually get started, get off the finish line. Or the start line, I mean. Can't get to the finish line if you don't get off the start line. So one of the things that I tell my music students all the time who are having a hard time practicing is that I will challenge them to just get their instrument out, to unpack it, get it out of the case, set up their music stand, set up their music, and that's it. I don't even actually challenge them to practice. I don't ask them to practice. I never actually ask them to fill out any kind of practice card. There's a lot of band directors and music teachers that will actually ask their students or require their students, especially like if they're getting a grade for it in band, to fill out a weekly practice card and like require them to do so many hours a week, like to do 2 hours a week. Sometimes it'll be for a grade. Sometimes it will be as like an incentive for stickers or for a piece of candy. Some private teachers will make them do it too, just to keep a record of it, or also for stickers. Some of them will do it just to require them just to see how much they're practicing. Some of them will just ask them how much they practice. I don't believe in that. I'm somebody who, the only time that I really ask them ever about practice is if they're struggling, you know, with their assignments. I'll ask them if they've practiced. If I notice that they're struggling, I will say something if I notice that they're struggling, and if they're just not getting anywhere, and I'll say, look, you know, are you practicing? You know, I really noticed that you're struggling. That's one of the few times that I'll actually mention anything about practicing, because, you know, they can't expect to be getting anywhere in lessons if they're not getting started, if they're not actually doing anything, if they're just showing up to lessons and expecting the world, if they're not doing their part, if they're not actually getting started. I don't know, you know, I'm not going to shove them. There's only so much that I can do. But I will challenge them to just get started, to just open their case, because chances are, unless they're literally going to be almost snarky about it and almost deviant and defiant, who would honestly take out their instrument, set it up, set up a stand, set up their music, and not actually practice? Once they get started, and pretty much anybody I've ever actually challenged to do this says the same thing, that once they actually get started, they get so involved in it that they'll look at the clock and they'll be like, oh my gosh, half an hour went by. I couldn't believe how easy it was. It's the motivation to get started with anything. And once you actually bring yourself to that motivation to get started with any kind of task, really, honestly, it goes by so quick, to the point where you almost realize, and I do this all the time, I struggle with motivation terribly. It's one of the things that really, this quote honestly hits home pretty hard for me. The motivation to get started is one of my biggest challenges sometimes. It's very easy to fall into kind of a burnout pattern and to just lay there and be like, oh, I'm just comfortable where I'm at. I don't want to get started, you know, maybe after this TV show, or maybe tomorrow, or maybe I'll have more energy tomorrow. Or once you actually get started, once you bring yourself to that point of getting started, it's amazing how quickly things go. And sometimes you can get so much done in a short period of time, and then you actually sometimes get to the point where you want to get more done, and you're like, I don't have the time to actually get all these things done, because then you actually want to start to kind of keep moving. And then it almost can be a vicious cycle, because once you actually do get started, then you want to keep rolling, and then it almost creates a little bit of an anxiety because you've let so much go for so long, and then you're like, where did the time go, and I can't get all the things done now that I want to get done. But that's the problem sometimes with the procrastination of just sitting there for so long. And if you've let a week go by and you haven't gotten started, all these things have piled up, right? And then when you do finally get started and you realize how much you can get done, and then you want to get it done because you're like, oh, this is not that hard, it's not that challenging to get it done. And then you want to keep going, but then the time you can get a lot done, but then you want to keep going because then you realize because you're basically distracting yourself by not getting things done. You're distracting yourself with the television, or by scrolling on a social media, or by texting with a friend, or by calling a friend, or watching a movie, or whatever it is that you're doing, or you're reading, or whatever it is, you're distracting yourself. And you're putting off in your mind what you're not getting started. But the second that you do start getting something done, then you're also kind of living in the moment, and you're being mindful in that moment of what you're supposed to be doing. And that's a good thing. But it's a residual effect of what you had been putting off, and then your mind starts spinning out. And that's probably why people kind of avoid that, because then sometimes you can get a little anxious about all the other things that you do need to get done. And then you realize all the time that you wasted, that you could have been doing, spending time doing the things that you should have been doing. And now you don't have as much time that you could have had initially. So then it becomes an anxious thing. And then some people, instead of continuing and doing the things that they could be doing and should be doing, will go back into the lazy cycle and start to distract themselves because they can't face it. Rather than continuing to get 5 things done, even though 10 things need to be done, they'll just be like, well, it's just better to escape it because I felt better. I don't like this feeling of the anxiety. And it's a very vicious cycle. It's a bad cycle. As somebody who doesn't like the feeling of anxiety, I get it. I completely get it. But you have to get started. If you ever want to finish anything, and it is bad because unfortunately sometimes when you get 2 things accomplished, sometimes 5 things can be added. But it's life. We have to all face life. It doesn't go away. Nothing goes away. We have to face it every day. And you also can't face the good things without facing the things that we have to do. So that is my soapbox for today. And I hope you enjoyed this little view into Mark Twain's quote. And the best way to finish the things that we need to finish is you just have to get started. You can't just sit there in a state of, being catatonic. We can't live life that way. Otherwise, we also can't enjoy life and the good things in life either. We just have to face life and keep going. Have a great day.